Let's see. Got it.
Did you listen to Glenn on Candace?
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right. I think we're ready to go here. As soon as we have feedback from the peanut gallery, we will proceed with the salad
Can
presentation.
we rename it Peanut Gallery? Because so many people have peanut allergies.
Let's go. That was
Or
all
like Cashew Gallery.
the cashew gallery, right? Pistachio gallery, the Brazil nut, right?
Yeah, a higher frequency nut description. What's the most psychedelic
Actually, I think it would be
nut?
better to call it the peanut allergy. Let's just call it the peanut allergy. It's
That's
just
way
the
better.
word rearranged, right? It's an
Way better.
you can just call it the peanut allergy instead of the peanut gallery. And we have 2 peanuts in the allergy. So the broccoli and a yummy, right? They want to be the broccoli gallery, right? All right. So we've got a few. We got 2. And so I guess we can just do some general chatter until we have at least a handful of nuts, and then we'll be ready to shake the bag. Anywho, how's your Sunday been?
I did an unexpected exorcism, which went well, but was far more, it required a lot more energy and focus than I thought I was stepping into.
Were you performing an exorcism on someone else, or did someone perform it on you?
You wish.
As per our conversation right before we got on.
No, I was giving some body work.
Some body work. All right. And this does happen. Like Laura says, sometimes that happens like with clients on the table, like you're just doing a normal treatment and before you know it, you're performing an exorcism, right?
Exactly. And then once you're sucked in and realize it's happening, it's like, well, the only way out is through. So it just requires, it's like, oh shit. Yeah. So yeah, it was one of those. How's your Sunday?
It's good. I'm just rolling with it. It's like completely upside down from the way that I thought it was going to be. But it's all good. It is what it is. I'm relaxing. Laura's out of town. And so I have tennis going on the computer and the TV, right? Like one of the things that my mind likes, but Laura struggles with, as would most normal people, is that I listen to multiple things at the same time. And sometimes I'll have multiple things going at once, or I have it so like when the commercial comes up on one, then I'll mute that and go to the other one and then go back and forth. Or like sometimes I'll do it like an obstacle course, like 2 minutes on my whatever I'm listening to on my phone, then 2 minutes on the computer, 2 minutes on the TV, then back to the beginning, right? So when she's not here, I can just have everything going all at once, and it's relaxing for my brain. You know?
Okay.
Right. So anywho. Well, that's my brain is firing at that speed anyway. So when it's just my brain and everything else is kind of quiet and slow, then I'm highly aware of how like out of sync with everyone else and everything else my brain is. But if I can create external chaos that matches the internal chaos, then it balances out.
That makes sense. You made it make sense.
I do. That's what I'm here for, is to make the nonsense make sense.
You're good at it. So Emily, why did you call this emergency broadcast?
Because like the reality, the days of the week that followed our Wednesday night live stream seemed to exist only to confirm ideas that we had been proposing or laying down, or suspicions we've had dating back to like the first time we got together when we reintroduced ourselves to each other in 2016, right? So it's like Thursday and Friday existed only for us.
Also, because we haven't had a pre-show, so I don't really know the extent of what we're talking about. But did you see both James Lindsay and Jonathan Haidt
on Joe Rogan
and on Jim Rutt? I
don't follow Jim Rutt, but the amount of the people that we've called into question being doubled down on. Now, I have to say that like I stopped following James Lindsay at a certain point, so I don't know where he's at on all the points. I know he's good on some stuff, and I have some questions about other stuff. And I have to say that like I do have a level of respect for Jonathan Haidt that I don't have for some of these other people, because he does seem to stick to his ethics even when it goes against like his preferred version of reality. Like I do think he protested the DeSantis bill to stop Palestinian protests on campuses, even though Haidt is Jewish and semi-pro-Israel, right? Like he fought against Palestinian protests being banned or whatever, right?
Well, I started to listen to his Jim Rutt, and it seems like he's calling for civil war / secession. And it's the same week that James Lindsay is calling for identification verification for internet use.
I didn't get to either of those. I didn't hear Jim Rutt at all, but I heard about the first hour of Lindsay on Joe Rogan, and then I heard about the first 15 minutes of Haidt on Rogan. So I can't speak intelligently about either of those, but it is interesting that they're back kind of in the mix because they were quiet for a little bit. I do know Haidt has a new book out, right? And that's so he's making the rounds. But yes, I did catch amongst all of the rest of the goodies this week. I did catch some of that. So basically, what I'm going to show today, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clips in an article that are sort of confirmations of, or like expressions or evidences of some things that we've been talking about for years, but also very recently in either the Wednesday night live stream or in some of our regular podcast shows. And there were so many of them that I'm like, if we wait till next Wednesday, these ones will not be relevant anymore because people will have moved on to something else, but also we'll have other things to cover by then. So I don't like to rewind too far. So I'm like, since Laura's out of town, I have a chance to do a Sunday show that I wouldn't normally have. Usually we're off doing something else. So let's do it. Right. All right. So first, remember our conversation about, we've had a couple of Tulsi clips recently. We've had like the glee in her eyes at the idea of like religion, in the United States, the sort of Handmaid's Tale thing. And then last week we looked at her sort of arc of discovery, moving her from our democracy to our republic, right? Yeah. And that was interesting. But I think I found the midpoint. Right. So when you start here, you go on an arc of discovery, right? And we have this over here and this over here, but I have found the midpoint that happened in her CPAC speech that was a few weeks before the Mar-a-Lago speech.
Cool.
So I think we have to, let's just watch it and then I'll say what I think might be going on. So, okay. So this is like from a clip on something called NERC News. And here we go. Okay.
And it looks like there might be some good news for those of you who want Trump to pick Tulsi Gabbard as a running mate. Trump's been teasing this for months. And there's been a lot of chatter recently.
Is that supposed to be Tulsi Gabbard?
Right.
I'm not even kidding. That doesn't look anything like her.
So I think that was one of her like pictures when she was in Congress, right? Like that she has that like I'm currently.
Looks like Catherine Zeta-Jones.
A little bit, but she also has that I'm currently serving helmet hair, right? Like when they get ready to, when they go from being a normal person to running to actually serving in office, the hair becomes more and more helmet-like, and then they retire, it relaxes a little bit, and then when they come back to office, it gets helmet-like again. And that looks like currently serving hair. So that was probably from when she was in Congress.
Okay.
But yes, I agree with you. She's definitely.
It looks like she has Patricia Arquette's teeth.
She has interesting teeth all the time, but yes, right now you're right. It does look like someone did like an AI face generator of mixing her with Zeta-Jones and Patricia Arquette.
Yes.
I got it. Okay, here we go.
Recently around Tulsi Gabbard in particular from disenfranchised Democrats and I guess you would say more moderate Republicans, as well as a lot of you guys watching, which I was frankly a little bit surprised by. This recent surge in interest in her is partially due to a speech she gave a few weeks ago at CPAC praising Trump.
Our democratic republic is being destroyed.
What? Our democratic republic. Okay, so the democratic republics are Congo. The democratic republics are like half of the countries that we consider third world and other places, right? So a democracy, a democratic republic, and a constitutional republic are 3 completely different things, right?
So we're watching the evolution of Tulsi's rhetoric.
The evolution of the rhetoric. And there's many ways you can think. There's like almost nothing else I have to, that was it. Like in this speech, she did not refer to our democracy or our republic. She called it our democratic republic, right? So there's a couple of ways to look at this. There is, she didn't know, and someone is grooming her on the better use of language for running in the Republican Party than running in the Democratic Party, right? Kind of thing. And that, maybe after maybe she had figured out that the Republicans are less obsessed with our democracy than the Democrats are. So she herself did the Democratic Republic thing. And then someone's like, oh, no, you can't do that. Let's get you a gig speaking in front of the pocket Constitution people, and they'll give you a tutorial while you're there before you speak or something. So that's possible. Or the other possibility, and then there's others, but these are the two I've considered since I saw this, is that I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but I believe I've heard this from more than one researcher who's dug deeper into these things, that the things she's doing in the military now, which is far different than what she used to do, is actually working in psychological operations, right? And this slow morphing of language and introduction of ideas in terms, or sort of this blurring of the lines, like, oh, it's a democracy, oh, it's a democratic republic, oh, it's a constitutional republic, oh, whatever it is, right? To me, seems like something that would be part of psychological warfare. How much can you get away with? Can you say democratic republic and people are thinking you mean, oh, a republic that uses democratic elections, when you mean like a third world country like fucking Congo or whatever, right? Or are you slow walking people, or are you just trying to trick them and fool them, and you figured out that, like, no, our democracy or the democratic republic lingo doesn't work with these people. I'm going to have to pretend that I care about the Constitution or the constitutional republic or whatever. But it seems like I just don't understand how a person who's been in office and who everything she's done in her adult life has been government related, like, wouldn't know the difference between these things. And wouldn't, if she was making a specific choice for a reason about why she was changing her language, wouldn't address that she was being an honest actor, right? And that there's just this morphing from years and years of our democracy, brief stop at Democratic Republic, and now on to Constitutional Republic, that's happened in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Everything you're saying is certainly possible. I'm also noticing that it's in the zeitgeist. And I'm noticing over the past, 4 years of accelerated awakening to the sham show, a lot of things will kind of come up at the same time, like Yuri Bezmenov's work and ideological.
All over the place now.
Everyone was talking about that at the same time, right?
Yep.
Whatever the Q thing was or whatnot. So I am hearing this. I, like, coincidentally or synchronistically, posted something yesterday about the destruction of our democracy. And it was a post that I'd made in 2020. And the chat was about, it's not a democracy, it's never a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. And like, no one was jumping on that back then. And I do know that she, like, according to her friend Mickey, she is on an awakening process. And she is going through it at her pace. So it's also possible that it's totally organic and authentic. Maybe she got a note about it being a republic and she's like, oh, okay, it's a democratic republic. And then she got schooled.
Right. Right. Because the thing that people who work in PSYOPs don't realize is that they're also the victim of someone else's PSYOP. So that's certainly entirely. So I think we're seeing like many layers of operation here.
Yep.
Right. And she's definitely a shapeshifter of many kinds, right? Not just physically, but just ideologically and all of this kind of stuff. And the amount of right-wing, like, Republic, she's been on Fox News for a while and been sort of like right friendly and right adjacent. But in the last few weeks, the number of sort of right-leaning or Republican podcasts, including Donald Trump Jr., including the drinking guys and the whatever, she's like, she is clearly making the rounds amongst the podcasts that are like the really pro-Trumpy, kind of people. So I think unless there's going to be an October surprise or something like that, I guess the vice president would be chosen before that. Like, I'm pretty certain she's going to be the pick.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty certain at this point. So that's all. I just wondered, but that CPAC was about 4 weeks before Mar-a-Lago. right? So it would be interesting. I don't have the time to do this, and I don't actually recommend anyone else waste any precious moments of their life doing this. But if anyone happens to notice, if once she switched from our democracy to democratic republic, and then once she switched from that to constitutional republic, if she has used in the time in between any of those the prior terminology at all, or if she has been completely reprogrammed.
Yeah, it's a worthy inquiry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So next clip that I have is I'm not going to show anything at all from this because I didn't listen to it. But remember our conversation on Wednesday about Destiny? Well, here he was showing up on Jordan Peterson's show the day after. So, right. So all of these things have happened in between when you and I spoke and on Wednesday and now. Right. Yep. So now Destiny is on Jordan Peterson. So the amount of places that Destiny has been in the last 6 weeks, right? The amount of platforms he has been introduced to. He's been around for a while, but he's been kind of stuck in that sort of weird bread tube gaming political silo for a long time. And suddenly he's crossed over into all of these places. And once you're here, right? Once we see this, then the arc is complete.
Also, his name is frickin' Destiny.
Correct, right? The arc of destiny, the arc of completion, all those kind of terminologies go together, right?
And this show launched the first day of spring, episode 433.
There you go. Exactly, right? And why, I don't understand after seeing what a fool he made of himself with Alex Jones, with when he debated Glenn Greenwald, when he was on with Norm Finkelstein, why people still think it's a good idea to have him on as a smart person. Mm-hmm. Is fascinating to me, but the amount of shows that he and Dr. Phil have been on in this circle in the last few weeks tells me what's up. Dr. Phil has been on every single wellness company sponsored podcast that you can think of in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I wonder if he's invested. Is Dr. Phil a Scientologist?
Well, we need to do a whole Scientology show, but I think it's just this, we're just watching the synthesis, the weaving of the synthesis right now. I'm seeing it in my mind's eye like a big net, so that when they drop the ball, it just sends the influence that much farther. So I think they're prepping for their, as I mentioned before we started recording, the stuff that Bustamante was seeding in his Andrew Schultz interview, war with China, Biden calling for intelligence reform, which will obviously be preceded by some sort of leak or whistleblowing or exposing of CIA wrongdoing. And then Biden will be really hard on it.
So Bustamante, I've been tracking him for more than 2 years now. And he caught my attention right away with CIA, the CIA, whatever it is, nonsense. That was the thing that really made me pay. He said a lot of shit in those 4 hours with Lex Fridman, but the thing that really caught my attention was the use of language, right? And 100%. So I've been tracking him since then. But do you know where he got introduced to this whole thing? That Concrete podcast with Danny Jones, who I cannot figure out why this person is famous and how he got famous. His podcast is huge, but most of the people that he has on his podcast are former intelligence who are now into UFOs or UAP or other kinds of informational topics, or who have some whistleblowing sort of background or something like that. And that was where he went from being unknown to being this person who is on we'll give him his crown once he's been on Joe Rogan. I'm sure that's coming.
100%.
And same with Destiny. I think that we'll see those two, on Joe Rogan sometime in the next little bit here. Yeah. So that Danny Jones podcast, that Concrete podcast, and sometimes he has some interesting guests that say things that are interesting, that I agree with, or whatever, right? But I don't understand how this person got into this position with this kind of podcast. Is he an intelligent? How did he land all these people that just freshly came out of intelligence and they want to come on and share their story with him?
Well, I don't know who this is, but is his background in intelligence?
I haven't looked into him at all. But
there's probably a reason that would make sense if that's the theme of his show.
He also is for my personal opinion, and I think there's more room for disagreement on this than there is with Lex. Not the most charismatic people. He kind of has like a kind of energy or vibe or whatever, in a different sort of way. But he has a very, very high-end professional setup for his podcast. So unless he was highly successful in something else before that and was just able to professionalize his way into a level of popularity that he has, but I just don't see, with the amount of intelligence that's moving through his chair, right, that there isn't something fishy going on there, and that these are the people that someone, whether that someone is governmental or corporate, and at this point, I suspect more corporate than governmental, right? That they're being seated there to spread a lot of questionable information and a few really good nuggets of truth and all sorts of really tantalizing bullshit.
Well, I mean, it could just be that this guy had a lot of money, went to some sort of podcast production agency, and they were like, oh, this guy's like just dumb enough that we can cool, let's book your, we'll book your guest, blah, blah, blah. Like, that seems really easy. But before we get too far away from it, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of do you say it Bustamante?
Bustamante. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
But because you brought up his correcting the CIA to CIA, which he also did at the very beginning of this show, and proceeded to say the CIA at least half a dozen times. But I'm wondering what that programming is like. He's so overt about needing that to be done. So I'm wondering if that's just a metric in terms of seeing in the populace who's paying attention, or what's being done with that adjustment. Well,
that's going to be the last video we look at, so I will address my thoughts on that then. But yes, there's something up for sure. Right? Like other people who I've had suspicions of in the alternative media, dating as far back as when RT first became popular in 2010 or 2011, I have always noticed that the people that I either am already suspicious of or end up becoming suspicious of because of this, all have some funny use of language in common with other people that I would classify as coming from the same peanut allergy.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So on to the next clip. Okay. So this is from Savvy Sab's podcast. Much love to Savvy. I'm sure at this point she has no idea who we are, but one day when I go to Boston to visit my sister, I'll just send her a note saying, I'll be here drinking a fancy cocktail at this time. If you like fancy cocktails, I'll buy one for you too. Come on over. Okay.
I take you up on that.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw this one. So good.
All right, but we're here. The whole thing is very good. I recommend people take a look at that, but this is why we're listening to this. Okay, and this is in response to the segment we did on Wednesday about the ridiculousness of RFK's picks for vice president.
RFK Jr. is, I don't know, man, he has people's heads.
She's going to hit a lot of stuff here, but wait for the gold mine. Just wait for the gold mine.
Spinning again in reference to another decision that he has made. Now, apparently, it appears RFK Jr. has selected someone as his running mate for vice president. You're going to see the New York Post article here, but you're also going to hear from him in reference to this choice in an interview that he just had with Chris Cuomo. So we're going to hear about that.
Another person who's really been making the rounds in the last few weeks, right?
Yep.
As well. And also, I
think the whole sham show with Don Lemon was part of getting people to accept Chris Cuomo.
Oh, interesting.
Next to Don Lemon, who obviously is still in love with censorship, Chris Cuomo is doing a better job of pretending that he's open to free speech now.
That's a good point. It makes it seem less extreme.
Yep.
The biggest problem that people are having, or people who still support RFK Jr., is that he appears to be flip-flopping on the issues, and he's starting to look inconsistent. And that also goes into this story about Nicole Shanahan, because it was actually Whitney Webb who called it out. And, Whitney is on it. Whitney is on it. She said the director of Shanahan's foundation is simultaneously part of Open Philanthropy, which financed Event 201, a pandemic simulation RFK Jr. has routinely criticized and is mainly funded by Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskowitz.
Oh, snap! Paging Dr. David Martin. For those of you, so David Martin has talked about Dustin Moskowitz on and off for a couple of years, but the best show I ever did with David is probably 3 years old now, two or 2.5, 3 years old now, where we did a deep dive on Dustin Moskowitz without him telling me anything about why I should be suspicious. And I went out and found a bunch of interesting things on my own and brought them back and presented them to him. And he was like, well, yes, that's kind of exactly what I'm saying, but thanks for saying it in a different way than I would. Dustin Moskowitz, like, you know what's funny? Remember, Dustin Moskowitz is another one. He looks almost exactly like a young Eric Weinstein. And remember, I found that thing about him going to Burning Man. I wonder if he went to the gay orgy with Eric at at Burning Man, right? So Dustin Moskowitz is where the entirety of the funding of the sham show exercise we've lived through since March 11th, 2020 comes from, right? At least in terms of the financing. And so that there's a connection to RFK's campaign, like just for you, Nigel, talk about circle jerkling.
Exactly.
Right?
So has there been any, I'd be curious to see the comments on this tweet. And I'd be curious to see if anyone from RFK's camp has addressed this. Do you know if that's happened?
I don't go on X. I can't get it. I can only look at like things themselves. I can never look at comments or replies, but I'm sure if you go to Whitney Webb's Twitter account, then you can screen share and we can enjoy the buffet. Once we're done with the salad bar, we should move on to the smorgasbord or the buffet or whatever. And that comment section will probably be full of nuggets. All right. So, but like, let's listen to Sabby for a few minutes while you're looking for that.
Yeah.
So she is referring to this announcement here from the New York Post.
Oh, yeah.
RFK Jr. to name wealthy attorney Nicole Shanahan as running mate in presidential run. So I'll tell you a little bit about her in just a second, right? So Whitney is, again, she's pointing out one of these inconsistencies with RFK Jr.'s beliefs versus what his campaign is supposed to be about. So Whitney Webb is a great investigative journalist. She was one of the first people, I think, that noticed this. And we'll get into who Nicole Shanahan is. Whitney Webb goes on to say, on Open Philanthropy and Event 201, Open Philanthropy was also tied to FTX scandal through SBF ties to the group via effective altruism. So she has a lot of this stuff. And it's funny because some people came after Whitney like, is there anything you like? Also, who knows if this is true, disappointing.
I just thought of the word altruism, true.
Yeah. Alternative truth. That's probably what it means to them. It isn't about doing nice things. It's about creating alternative truths and making religions out of them, because that's what isms are.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Continuing.
And Whitney said the literal sources for it being true are in the tweets. So again,
sometimes Whitney just says it as it is, and I appreciated that one. The literal proof is what you just looked at, right?
Got to understand that Whitney Webb does her research. She's done a lot of research about Jeffrey Epstein. So she's one of the people I would say you got to be okay. She does her research. Now, Nicole Shanahan.
All right. So did you find something you were looking for?
No, my computer gets really slow when we live stream. I just made it to Whitney's Twitter account.
Okay. So for people who don't know what we're talking about, like I did a show with David Martin, like I said, about this Dustin Moskowitz character who's involved in all kinds of weird stuff and has all kinds of rationales for why they're doing what they're doing. His girlfriend's name is literally Carrie Tuna. Right? Remember, that's her name. Her name is Carrie Tuna. I'm like, well, that's a perfect name because something is fishy at the deli, right? You look like you had something to say.
Well, I mean, I know you've done a lot of research, but isn't he basically the guy who funded the pandemic?
He funded the Event 201 and he's heavily invested. This is where again, this is looking way back. So if I get a detail or two not exactly right, it's just because time has passed. But this is what triggered David's awareness that something funny was going on because of the use of when he started noticing on his like patent searches or whatever it was, the use of the term a novel coronavirus or a novel virus, when he like traced back to see where that word originated from, it was not in the lexicon until a certain point. And it was at this particular point with this open philanthropy group and certain investments they were making in certain companies that would become prominent during this thing that he got ticked and started to understand what to look for, because all of his, like the way he discovers if there's evidence trails is by language patterns, right?
Yep.
The linguistic genomics.
Yep.
And so when you go and you look at the investment patterns in some of these biotech companies, it seems like the purpose of the exercise wasn't really about what we would be our first, second, or third thing we would think about of what it would really be about was. It was about getting people to accept this technology, which they otherwise wouldn't accept, right? That because it's so, you know, they've been trying to push that technology. It has 4 letters in it. I'm not going to say what they are just out of playing the nonsense YouTube game. But that they had been trying to get approval for this kind of technology for a long time, and they couldn't. And there's like literal gold mines because it would create a scenario where like personalized medicine could be created on the spot, and that there was this other company that Moskovitz was invested in called Sherlock. My Sherlock device, or it was part of one of the bioscience companies that would literally be something that you would use in your own home every day to figure out what was wrong with you and what you needed to correct that with. And there was like all kinds of nutso shit that your mind can go wild with about one would do with that. But that seems to be like that's the thing at the end of the rainbow for them, is that this constantly updated computer algorithmic generated solutions to computer algorithmic generated problems, uniquely tailored to each person that would never have any other nefarious uses or side effects, that we wouldn't have to worry about that at all. But that seemed to be like and I was able to dig out from medical journals and business journals the evidence of this that existed prior to, right? So, and then, you know, Dustin Moskovitz has all these weird, like he's invested in quietly, like nobody ever talks about, when they talk about Facebook, they talk about, you know, Mark Zuckerberg. When they talk about COVID, they talk about Anthony Fauci or, you know, what's the Borla guy from Pfizer or whatever it is. They don't talk about him, even though he's into all this stuff. And he seems to be sort of equally invested in things that are bringing in the dystopic future. And then also these things that sound like lovely spiritual metaphysical solutions to the problems of the common man, of which he considers himself one. And his report on his visit to Burning Man was like, what's wrong, dude? I'm just a normal guy, even though I fucking, you know, took a helicopter into Burning Man or whatever it is, right? It's a very strange profile. But he's not in that kind of, you know, we are all free to criticize Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Larry Ellison and all of these people, but very few people, unless you've listened to David Martin, have heard of Dustin Moskovitz, or unless you're a person who wants a check from him and then you've heard of him. But
I remember David Martin doing a series of shows on him, and he was on his like say his name, like blast the internet with his name. It was like he was on a mission for a while to get that out. And he'd also said that he's never seen anyone wipe the internet better than Moskovitz has in terms of not finding anything about him on it.
I will, this is what I'm going to do because I love you all so much. I believe that was a supporter only show that I did where we fully dug out Dustin Moskovitz. I will go dig that out and I will post it in the public Rockfin. So you don't have to log in or anything when you're on the free Rockfin thing like you do on locals or whatever. If you're just a free member, I will go sometime this week, dig it out and post it. And I will let people know where the link to that is on Wednesday when we do our regular live stream. So everyone can see David and I dabbling in the Dustin Moskowitz dump. That's what I will do. I will go dig it all back out so people can see.
You're a goddamn saint, Emily.
I am a goddamn saint.
Thank you.
With a peanut allergy. No, I'm just kidding. I have a peanut. Well, I don't have a peanut gallery anymore. A peanut allergy, but not the kind that the children in kindergarten all now seem to have.
We're rebranding it.
Okay. So it's that he now has done the full circle of he is the COVID savior back into I'm courting a person or I'm being courted by and accepting possibly a person who was part of Open Philanthropy, which funded the entire thing, which put me in the position I'm in now. The circle jerk is kind of complete.
So it goes back to exactly what we were saying on Wednesday, that RFK's campaign is in no way, shape, or form serious.
No, yeah.
At this point, I'm starting to think he's punking his handlers. This is, and I know I'm but I feel like he's feeling so strangled by whatever this, dark devil deal he made is pushed him into, that now he's like, fine, I'll go through with it, but he's like deliberately sabotaging it. It's the only way I can make sense of such an overtly hypocritical campaign.
What do you think that you on some level you have to be right? So there's only one of two options, that what you're saying is exactly right, or he is so deeply entrenched in the superiority of the elite that he believes that by the time people figure this out, it would be too late. And if he really still thinks he's running for president or whatever, I don't know what's happening, that people wouldn't have been able to figure this out. But he literally has had Whitney Webb on his podcast, right? And so he knows that she knows these things.
Right.
Whatever anyone thinks of Whitney Webb, right? She knows these things. And at a certain point, she can't not say something about it and maintain the credibility for the issues that she cares about, right? Which she has her own particular things that she cares about. And so I don't understand how, I'm sure that a lot of people he's dealt with, he's comfortable that they're not smart enough or organized enough to put two and two together, but he has dealt with the people who are. And I'm curious, where is David in all of this? Why isn't David saying anything? David's been completely mum on YouTube and Facebook and everything for a long time now. Is
that true, or is he just not coming up in your feed? Has he legit not made any shows, or have you just not tapped into what he's doing?
I mean, I'm subscribed to him on YouTube and I am friends with him on Facebook. And I think I saw him and Kim do something that was about something totally else, maybe 3 months ago, right? So maybe if other people are still on that train and know what's going on over there, right? But
I feel like David is too smart to offer an opinion on this. It's too close to the community that has become his family community at this point. And he's so deliberate about maintaining neutrality about certain things.
Right.
I can't see him. That would not make sense.
But someone said
to offer an opinion on this one.
But he's been waiting for someone to say his name, to say Dustin Moskowitz's name.
Correct. But if David jumps on this one now, how many friends and supporters will immediately drop him? He's very strategic.
He is very strategic. I maybe I'll reach out and ask him.
I don't think there's an upside in that for him.
It's true. It's true. There probably isn't. But I mean, there's not an excuse that anyone can make for this. You can't say that he didn't know. It's just impossible that he didn't know about this. And so, but you know that there's people out there who are going to be like, well, I don't care. It's possible he didn't know, or maybe she's done an arc of evolution just like all of these other people, right? So,
but it makes no sense because there's nothing remarkable that she's bringing to the
Correct.
table for him to justify bringing in a non-politician who's of the wealthy elite class, who allegedly broke up Elon Musk's marriage and all the other things
Wouldn't
that
it be
maybe
interesting?
he's banking on us not figuring out. Like, there's not, what's her secret sauce? Like, what's her superpower?
But maybe she's writing a check for an exercise too. Maybe this is exercise 202 or 203 or whatever it is. This entire sham show, right?
This also might just be chaos. This might just be pure chaos.
Chaos magic. Yeah.
Us to drum up hopium. Like, it just might be its own little thing.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, I just was like, wow, okay. So there's no, like, anybody who was holding out one last thread of hope, that's gone. Sorry, guys.
I cannot wait to hear how it's rationalized in the alt media and in the medical freedom. I just can't wait to hear what kind of spin they put on it.
Correct. And we're into that portion of the show now, right? Because it's fascinating to me what those people accept, right? That somehow it is okay that the person who caused the thing is now going to solve the thing. You know what I mean? Like, okay. All right. So, along those lines, for those who saw our regular show this week called Narrative Control Supplements, that if you haven't had a chance to watch, you can go to the description of this after it posts, or you can just go to wordspodcast.locals.com and use the promo code, all capital letters, one word, welcome to words, and check out that there's this company called the Wellness Company that is like sponsoring and funding almost all the characters in the Sham Show on some level. Revolver News had the top article on Revolver News this week was this: Peter McCullough helps create an ingenious weapon to fight back and win against medical tyranny. And you know what that weapon is?
No.
Created the Wellness Company.
Oh my God.
Right? That's
the timing of this after Polly. What is that? What is that? That's crazy.
Well, I mean, I don't know what.
This is the out in terms of we're showing you exactly who we are. Don't pretend like you were coerced when we flat out told you.
But remember, this guy has always freaked me out, right? Remember, I mean, I think at a certain point, I don't know if he and Robert Malone are still working on their newer, safer lollipop, or if this just became more fun and more profitable than the lollipop, and so they decided to do this route instead. Like, it's like a bunch of jelly beans instead of a single lollipop.
I think they had like I heard that they had a personal falling out, and then I think it was just Malone and Kirsch. But the last I checked, I believe McCullough was still on the website.
Okay, so this whole safety thing, this is the weapon, the medical emergency kit. So I guess that's why this is an emergency podcast. That's why it was an emergency, to keep our families safe during emergencies and shortages. But this is the weapon to fight tyranny, is the Wellness Company.
You know, this is something that I've been saying the whole time. Can you go back to that for a second?
Yeah.
Because I would say the bulk of my adult life, my friends are usually the ones who are eschewing the Western medical paradigm to an extreme. We're all the ones with like all the supplements and the self-healing tools and the colloidal silver and wild oregano oil and like that whole thing. And I find it odd that in the past few years, a lot of these people are taking ivermectin daily.
I know.
And I'm like, when did you jump on the Western medical paradigm?
Totally.
What is that about?
It's like I'm naturopathic except ivermectin, right? And it's like it's one thing. Like I don't bemoan. When somebody is ill or injured and in incredible distress or pain, you do what you do to get yourself out of it. But the idea that you are then going to go like taking ivermectin is a parasite killer. Like, it's not good for you to take that every day, right? But I know there's people who are on a prophylactic like set of things that they take every week, all of them either pharmaceutical or mass produced supplement that are like the rock scrapings and nothing real, which is basically what they probably say. Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah, no. So, okay. So I thought that was interesting. So people want to hear us talk more about the wellness company, go to our regular show. All
Words
right.
85.
Words 85, narrative control supplements. Okay. Next clip. So we made our remember on Wednesday night when you were like talking about how all this you wonder why Candace is doing this, all this low vibe stuff she's doing. And
Correct.
I said, well, I think maybe she's trying to get something on the record in case they fire her.
Yes.
Then she has all of these things on the record, right? Literally the next day, Dave Rubin goes on Paul Bet David and says, I think I think she's going to be out, right? Like he's like, I can't imagine that this is going to be able to continue, right?
Correct.
That was Thursday. And then by Friday, she was out. And of course, Dave's saying it's his prediction, but you and I know that we beat him to it. Right. And it's been fascinating so there's not been a she was fired or she quit. It's like, we are no longer in relationship. And then she had a tweet saying she's free. But I was looking at some clip that I didn't bring today because I just had started to have too many, where on her last show that was part of that, that was part of Daily Wire, she said she was about to leave to go to Israel and Gaza to report from the ground.
Yes.
Right? Sabby was talking about that.
Yes, I saw that.
And then it was like, oh, they had to fucking fire her before because she's going to go there and she's going to say stuff that is definitely that right now. Dave Rubin is in Israel and he went there with Daily Wire people and other people. And they're just telling, they sent Barry Weiss to Israel and to the West Bank. And she was able to come up with 8 minutes of, somewhat sympathetic coverage for Palestinians from the West Bank to go along with the 22 years she's done of pro-Israel content, right? But Candace was going to go over there. And one thing we know for sure about Candace, and we don't know the intention behind what she does. We don't know if she's doing things for attention or because she really believes them, but we do know she's happy to go against the grain. She's happy to make a ruckus. She does not want to be restricted, right? So whatever you think of her, she's not a dummy and she's not going to be controlled, at least not knowingly, right? That was about to be a problem. And so that was why that sort of had to happen. And right after that, there was the separation. And so here's Dave talking about it the next morning because now he's in a bind because she left Daily Wire and started a Locals page. Right. And Locals is the company he started that's now been bought by Rumble, but was supposed to be for free speech. So now I'm wondering that this is how this is going to turn into either I'm starting to see bills come down this week, like in South Dakota, they passed anti-Semitism bills. We have the thing going on in Florida and whatever, that saying anti-Semitic things is now going to become illegal. So then they'll be able to block people who talk about it, but it'll be because it's the law, not because it's anti-free speech or whatever it is. Or if this is Candace positioning herself in this way to take everyone out, because you'll hear I'll play a little bit of this clip, but if you listen to the whole thing, Dave Rubin is like pretty gross. But he at one point had wanted her husband to invest in Locals and he didn't, right? And so now my guess is that Candace has figured out the same things you and I have figured out on some level about like the free speech corralling and hurting and whatever. And so maybe she and George are going to start their own site. And so she has to prove that they're going to fucking get rid of the people on Rumble and Local that are going to speak out against Israel so that then she can herd them in the next layer of the operation.
Well, remember when she did the herding onto the Patriot Fund? So I don't know that she's not controllable. I don't know.
But this is what I'm saying. She won't participate. I don't think she will participate she does not want to be controlled. And if she thinks that someone is trying to control her, she's not into it, right? But if she's participating in the thing willingly, or if it's her idea, that is a different thing than someone telling her, no, you can't do that.
Correct. So I think that the Locals thing might just be a fuck you to Dave.
I think it's so funny. I
think it's hilarious. I don't know if it's real, but I'm still holding out the tiniest bit of hope because for all intents and purposes, she's unemployed. She's available for the next opportunity. I really want her to be Trump's vice.
or like the press secretary. Can you imagine her standing where Karine Jean-Pierre stands now? I would love to see her as the press secretary.
She's smarter than she would never take that job. Because she needs to share her opinions and her ideas. I mean, she has a very America first perspective. Right. And I wonder if it isn't throwing a wrench into Tulsi's kind of the climbing that Tulsi's been doing.
Oh, those are the two biggest. Those are the two. I will knife you in the back.
Like climbers. That cat fight right there. Tulsi versus Candace right now.
Yes. What was that? Wasn't there like a show, like a cartoon show on MTV that put celebrity deathmatch, Tulsi and Candace Owens, dude. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
I guarantee that Tulsi is freaking out right now.
Maybe.
Because Candace is black. And that is, there's currency in that game. More currency than Tulsi's Hawaiian thing.
The only thing that would be better is if there was a black lesbian missing an arm.
Dare to dream.
Right? Okay. All right. So let's watch a few minutes of the Dave clip trying to pretend that he's surprised, right? That he hadn't either heard from us or heard from our handlers or their handlers, not our handlers, from his handlers the night before.
I'm still embarrassed by how much virtual ink this is getting from these people. It's so like kind of insular and gossipy, the same way that like the Oscars now are all just like celebrities talking to other celebrities from stage. Right. It feels like another iteration of that where like everything revolves around them.
Here's the other thing. You know how sometimes we've questioned whether like part of how we're so on to Heather and Brett or whatever is like, maybe we come from the same program, maybe we have the same set of handlers and whatever, maybe we're just in a different portion of the, like I just said, our handlers didn't tell Dave. Like, remember the period of time when I was like almost 100% certain, it still hasn't been disproven that Dave Rubin was living around the corner from me in Los Angeles?
Yes.
Remember that? Yes. Right? And the house that he lived in was right where like all the white CIA vans in the neighborhood were parked. Right? Like the ones with like the satellite dishes on them and stuff like that, right? Like it was right in front of the house that I was like, based on the way he described where he was living and things I observed, like I had made up, and I had those, didn't I ever tell you about those weird dreams I had with Dave Rubin and them?
Maybe.
I had met them at this coffee place. I had met him at a coffee place and we were talking about, didn't I tell you this? I don't remember all the details. But then then he went on Alex Jones after I had this dream. And when he did when he came back on his own show after having been on the Alex Jones show, he said a thing that he had said to me in the dream, which I felt like was confirmation that the dream was like a real thing. Yes. Right? Go back. I don't remember if we ever talked about this on a show or if I just told you when we were having coffee or at your apartment one time or something like that. But I had that dream when I was living where I thought was just a block or two from him, right? Yep. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if we have like the same sleep creepers, right? Like if we're getting the same beamed information from the satellites on the CIA vans outside of our house, and we're just analyzing them differently or behaving in accordance differently to the stimulation. I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me because just the proximity of you and Dave and Heather and Brett and all the coincidences surrounding it, like it would not surprise me in the least.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so here's Dave Rubin doing whatever it is he does.
Friday roundtable extravaganza, but then all hell broke loose on the internets about a half hour ago. You have probably heard already, the Daily Wire and Candace Owens have parted ways. This is unfolding right as we speak. There are announcements being made and videos being put out there and everything else. To some extent, for better or worse, I'm kind of right in the middle of this thing because we just found out a few minutes ago that Candace has officially opened a locals page and is planning on going independent. She put up a video over there. Also,
why does that put him in the middle of things? I see that he wants to put himself in the middle based on gossip and like low vibe friendship stuff, but I don't see where the situation of its own accord naturally he doesn't have anything to do with locals. And even if he did, I still don't see how that would put him in the middle of anything. What am I missing?
Remember, he's also mediating the peace talks between Brett and Elon. He's right.
Is that real? Oh, that's right. That's right. He was getting, I'll call him.
He was going to talk to Elon about,
Correct.
refriending Brett on X, right? On the
Correct.
X-Files.
Correct.
So no, this is another one of these people who way overestimates their relevance and their importance in the world.
Correct.
Yeah, and he also, like, he's another person like that you can tell has not gotten over whatever self-shame he had as a kid, because he was like a young gay boy and didn't want to admit it or whatever, because he has to be included with all the cool kids or the next thing or whatever. He can't ever just like sit one out.
Yep.
He always has to be like right up in it, All right, here we go.
Obviously, I've been in the mix with Candace and with Ben and the Daily Wire and all that.
You're just in the mix with everyone, Dave.
And Candace Owens have
Who I
parted
basically
ways.
discovered.
This is
I
unfolding
accidentally,
because she's joining Locals
Hold
now, which I created. But also it's personal because Candace and I kind of came up together. Ben and I kind of came up together.
listen to how
I
he
actually
starts to demean her. Listen.
sort of gave Candace her first break, I guess, in a way, because she used to be a little known YouTuber, known.
She was a little YouTuber until he had her on. A little YouTuber.
But isn't this interesting, Emily, that this happened after our show where we said red pill black?
Right.
He hadn't said it when he was on Patrick Bet Davis.
Right. Yeah.
Known as Red Pill Black, and the first kind of legit show she was on when she had just a couple.
Because all other shows are not legit. So when she was not legitimate until she was on his show. He literally gave birth to Candace Owens.
He said, I basically discovered her.
Was my show. So we're going to go into some of the history of it. I want to talk about how all this relates to obviously free speech and big tech and everything else. And I'm going to do my best to remain a bit as above the fray as possible, not make any of this personal or anything else. We'll see if I can actually do that. And interestingly, I'm sure many of you saw it, but I was on Patrick Bet David's podcast yesterday, and they were talking a bit about the Candace Ben feud and some of the stuff involving Tucker. And I basically said, like, obviously she's leaving the Daily Wire. I did not know it was going to happen today. I had no idea about anything related to Locals or anything like that. But anyway, so here's just a tweet. This is from Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO of the Daily Wire. This is about half hour ago, 40 minutes or so. Daily Wire and Candace Owens have ended their relationship. Now, it's worded in such a way that it's unclear to me whether they fired her, whether she quit, whether it was totally mutual. But this was obviously coming, right? Like, Ben and her have been going after each other. For a moment, it does not matter which side you are on in terms of the Israel-Hamas conflict or anything else, but it is a network. The Daily Wire is a network.
He has been so coached to call it the Israel-Hamas issue, right? Like you could see him in his head. He almost said Palestine, but then he said Hamas.
Yep.
It's an important distinction to make between a network and a platform, right? And for those of you that
he's setting up the story of like, right, the difference between a network and a platform.
Yep.
Right.
That have been following.
Because he's also afraid that he'll get in trouble with his, what do we call it? The PayPal mafia, Jewish overlords, if he does the wrong thing here. So he's trying to explain that, like, for right now, I can't actually do anything because I'm a platform and not a network, or,
Yep.
Tech fights for a long time. This is when we talk about Section 230 of the Communications Act. One of the differences between a network and a platform is a network, like Fox News is.
Okay, we don't need to hear him explain this. If people are interested at all, go watch this. But he goes on to do the exact same thing that you could tell he felt embarrassed when Brett was doing, about when Brett was complaining about being blocked by Elon Musk. And he goes on to explain how somehow, even though they'd been friends for so long and she'd helped them decorate their baby's room, she blocked them or she'd unfriended him or something like that.
No, she unfollowed him on Twitter, and he took that to mean that she didn't want to be his friend anymore. P.S. How would he know that?
Right. And also there was something about a changed cell phone number and not giving him the new one or something like that. Right. So he's literally doing that same thing that you could tell he was like, oh, you're being embarrassing, when Brett did it on his show about the Elon Musk thing.
Yeah. The other thing that stood out to me, which I mentioned to you already, is how he offered the caveat at least 5-7 times. I don't want to contribute to the division. I
Right.
don't want to, I want to honor our friendship. So he made this point of like, I don't want to get into any sort of judgments on her confusion around Israel, the things he said, but let's bring on Andy No. And then he brings on Andy No.
Say all the things he didn't want to say.
Right. Like go for the gut, like really kick her in the nuts.
What did Andy No say? I didn't get to that part. Like I just got the part that was the sort of relevant.
Really standard issue, like how she is not offering the proper deference and she's not offering the proper apologies. She's an
She's
anti-Semite.
not following the template that they sent out to everybody, that if you want to continue being funded by us, you have to condemn Hamas with these words and not those words.
Correct. It was,
Okay.
it was standard issue, but it was delivered with invective and like judgment.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting in terms of Dave like going out of his way to be like, I'm a good person. I would never slander her. Let's bring in Andy No to do
Who
exactly.
can I hire to do it for me?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And Andy No was a willing hooker for that.
At this point, having watched these same bits of media as well as Sabby, I was still not clear. Like, well, we don't know that she got fired for not having
We
the
don't know
right.
that.
Don't
No.
know that. But Glenn Greenwald said that he knows that she was let go for those reasons. Now that was hearsay. He didn't say who he'd heard it from. But there is still the fact that like an official story has not yet been offered by
Yep.
either side to know who decided to leave. But by her saying I'm free, it makes
Yep.
me think maybe she did those last two shows as a means of acting out to just get herself booted.
Yeah, I don't think Glenn Greenwald is a lawyer, so I don't think he would say something like that if he didn't have some degree of confirmation. And I
Right.
suspect that she will go to Israel and Gaza still, and that when she returns, that she will probably be a guest on his show. Right. I'm seeing that there's going to be some collaboration of some sort because they're in some ways similar personality types. They're both they don't want to be controlled by other people. Intensely. I mean, we all don't want to be controlled by other people, but they will act out on a level that is different than what many other people will do. So yeah, I think we will see them together in the future. Her on his show, him on her show, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, we have no official confirmation one way or the other. And I think it's equally as likely that she was like, I'm done with you people because you're gross, as that she got fired. But it is very it's so naked and obvious. Like there's no way that they can try and convince people that it wasn't really about what it was about.
Also, and I have the clip, but we're at time, so I just want to honor that as well. But I saw this clip from Ben Shapiro like a couple months ago saying that racists should be hunted down and exposed and we should attack their income streams.
Right.
And I was struck by like, Jesus Christ, that is so violent and creepy. So I was just curious, like, what is his stance on free speech? Does he vacillate? Where is he on that?
So did you see the thing that happened like at the semi beginning of the Israel-Palestine, I'm going to call it what it is, the Israel-Palestine conflict, where somebody, remember when Bill Ackman was mad about Harvard allowing a pro-Palestinian protest, and he did this thing where he got all the names of the people who participated in that, and he made a list of them and generated it to all the corporations and sent a bus with the poster on the side that basically was trying to make sure these people can never work in like finance or corporate America or whatever. When he did that, someone, I can't remember if it was Bill Ackman, like a few months after that or a few weeks after that, it was him or one of his ilk or whatever, created a website or a fund that was designed to create to set aside positions for Jewish people to like just the same way that it's like DEI for Jewish people, right? And Ben replied to the tweet, love this. And then someone pointed out to him that goes against his complaints about jobs being set aside for women, people with no arms, lesbians, whatever it is, right? And he's like, oops, he literally had to come out and say, oops, now that I think about it, this isn't a good idea. But his gut instinct was, I love this, right? So it's the free speech that goes along with what he thinks, or at least doesn't highly offend what he thinks he's for, right? And the free speech that is the real free speech, which is speech that you don't like, he's against. And he is pro-advantage for the people that are on his team and anti-advantage for the people who are not on his team.
Sounds about right.
Pretty naked and plain, yeah. Have you noticed how strange he's looking with that facial hair lately? He has like this weird beard that like, it's not full, like he's got a lot of like patchy spots in the goatee. Like, it's not like he doesn't have much
Ben?
facial hair.
You talking about Ben?
Yeah, it looks so weird. It looks
I
like
think he's in his kind of like handsome, dashing GQ phase. I feel like that's the vibe I'm getting from him.
but it's not working. Like it looks like his face looks like a, I'm not going to say it. I think it would be crass if I say what I really think. Anywho, all right. So moving on to the last clip. Here we are. We have Andrew Bustamante on the Flagrant podcast with Andrew Schultz. And I think we can just play the little opening bit because it's the opening minute condenses the entire podcast into 1 minute, and then we can offer our opinions and then we can move on. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Is it part of your jurisdiction working for CIA to put holes in Kennedy's?
First of all, we don't call them jurisdictions, we call them authorities.
What a strong denial! I want to tell you why I think you're still part of the CIA.
I am not a part of CIA. It's not true. It's not called the CIA. It's just called CIA.
I'm going to get you to call it the CIA, and I win. Then I'm the super spy.
There's a presidential election coming up in November. There is no good outcome. Trump said, you guys are a bunch of idiots. You keep calling me a Russian spy. All of a sudden, that called into question whether CIA even knew what they were doing.
He chooses not to use CIA.
Private intelligence can do things that national security can't do.
Aliens, UFOs, real or not?
UFOs are real, but they're not alien. It's us.
Did you ever kill somebody?
I cannot answer that question in great detail. I can say that I've never intimately killed anyone. What I think is going to happen is Zelensky and Netanyahu are going to get political sanctuary asylum in the United States. The United States can't let Zelensky die. Everybody knows Putin wants to kill him.
What do you think happens?
In Israel, Palestine?
Alex thinks Chinatown is a cell.
Yeah, city cell.
You're right.
What the f?
Chinatown is a diaspora of Chinese immigrants, so the intelligence community plants its own operatives inside that community. But keep in mind that the CIA...
The what?
Correct.
Who?
Google Fiber.
Okay, so I recommend people go and watch this. But in the first 10 minutes, he literally, like, I think that you and I don't know who else, but I'm assuming there are other people because I don't think we cause all the reactions in the world, just most of them. I've been going on for like over at least a year and a half about this CIA versus the CIA thing. And then how I heard Tucker say that and whatever it is. So Andrew Schultz and his friends press him on that. He gives an explanation. Right. So he's been forced to explain this. And the explanation was basically, well, CIA is an acronym. So there's no the acronym. It's the Central Intelligence Agency. But when you're using the acronym, it's CIA. Have you heard, like, when Jeff and I talk about, so first of all, you know how we have like the Constitution for the United States and then the corporate Constitution of the United States? This feels like something like that. Like, is there a CIA and a the CIA, and one is like the corporate version, and one is like the more, if there's any such thing as a government that exists in any way people think it's supposed to exist kind of thing, that. But have you heard when Jeff and I go on and on about like the acronyms when multiple things have the same acronyms?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So like if the acronym for the thing is it's separate entity from the thing, then what is he talking about actually? And I think there's something to that, right? Because he went on and on and on about not calling it the CIA, and then he did call it the CIA. So is what he was referring to when he called it the CIA a different entity than CIA he says he works for? So who does he work for?
Oh, he works for CIA, but not the CIA.
Or maybe he works for the CIA and he's not part of CIA anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Interesting. I was thinking it was a rhythmic thing, like that there's something in terms of a hypnotic harmonic in CIA that they were going for, or just a marker to see like how many people are going to be persuaded by this particular propaganda campaign that this Andrew guy is leading.
Did you see that that there was like a video clip on Twitter that went out this week of like, I think Millie, one of those people who used to be like a military government person, explaining to the Congress that they were the board of the board of a company called the United States Congress or whatever it was. It was from 2019. No. But like when I saw that, I'm like, this is where we're at. And so when you're having all of these, there's so much apparent chaos and dissent right now that like I wonder if the only real rupture is from the corporate governance and the people who think that they're still actually serving the people on some level, and that some of these ways of referring to things, that there's an underlying other thing being referred to that most people aren't aware of. And this feels like part of that. But the acronyms, I need to look into what other things CIA stands for. What other, is there a crypto? Is there a stock? Is there other corporations that use that acronym? Is there algorithms? Is there genetic things going on with those codes? All that kind of stuff that we used to do with the other acronyms, right?
I think it's just social engineering. Like I hear you, and if you are authentically inspired to go on this,
I'm not going to do a dig deep, but yeah.
I think it's more a rhythmic cadence. And I think it's also related to like just all the kind of Mandela effects that are shifting culture, even just like POTUS and SCOTUS, which were never articulated in the public sphere until a few years ago. But because I actually did watch 2.5 hours of this, I think that the purpose of this particular interview, and he's making the rounds again, he's like, we're seeing him. Yeah. Is to bring in public support for war with China, is to further demonize Trump, and is to seed this intelligence overhaul thing. But also, this is a super short clip. Right, it's since you already have it pulled up, 26:30, so 26 minutes, 30 seconds.
Okay.
And there's actually another one that I kind of just want your take on.
All right, let me get past it.
Now in 5 gig.
It's unbelievable, the things that I can do.
My crew's getting it.
I'm podcasting.
26:30?
Yes.
CIA.
Trying to not make us... Yeah, we're going to have to listen to the minute before.
Or maybe the better question is it possible, because this is what you always hear, that there are corporations that are using the CIA almost as like a private military for their interests? Is there any truth to that?
I wouldn't say that. So the fact that private agencies are using CIA resources like a private army, there's no direct evidence that that is what's happening.
Hey, I got a banana factory in Nicaragua. Go start a coup because the current administration is not letting me sell my bananas.
So that's not the corporation that makes that decision, but that is the lobbyists who can lobby the policymakers who are federally appointed or voted in. They're the ones that can then direct the CIA.
And they're lobbying whom? CIA. They're lobbying the director that was appointed by the president, or they're lobbying...
This is what I'm saying. Like, what if there... the entire, like, we know that there's this weird thing with the corporate governance, right? But we don't think about it. Oh, well, would there also, is there a corporate everything else, and then one that is like slightly different that exists at a different level, right? So is there multiple like layers of, when I say this, of course, there's multiple layers of government, but is there like still some people there in Washington like pretending that they're a real government while the others are just completely corporatized? And is there a distance between those? And so when he says CIA versus the CIA, is he literally referring to different agencies or different versions of the same agency?
Right, I understand the theory, and it's certainly possible. One thing that I also want to point out is how he knows everything about everything. He's not just an intelligence agent, he's a master on history, on law. He just knows everything.
Yeah. Well, he has these like really long antennas coming off of his head. Like, that whole theory about like the Native Americans and their long hair or whatever. So maybe that's what this is about, right? Is that like he has an antenna to every radio receptor in the entire world. And so I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, he does. He does have, that trait that he either knows everything or he pretends to know everything or whatever.
It's all their operatives do.
Right.
It's not even like a commentary on his personality. He does admit in this and probably in other shows that he is close to a sociopath.
Yep. No, he said that many times. He says he's a sociopath. He says he's like highly loyal to a master if he believes in the master's mission.
Correct.
He's told. Like there's I don't think he's completely full of shit. I think he tells a lot of truth about who he is, about how he operates, about how the world works, about what government does or whatnot, but that there's like, they'll allow him to say 98 true things for the 2 things he's going to say that are going to be untrue. And those are going to be the 2 that are the most seductive for people to want to believe in that, those, unfortunately, people are going to pay more attention to the untrue things, but not because they're untrue, because those are the things that they hope are true. And so they'll latch onto that. And then they'll say that like some of the other things aren't important.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Continuing or
Please.
done? Okay.
The president and the congressman, and then
the president and the president's advisor panel. Because here's the other thing to keep in mind:
So the CIA is getting all this shit, and they're just doing what they're told. So it's really the politicians that should be getting the shit.
Right.
I thought the CIA was acting on their own. Well,
he is also now going back and forth between CIA and the CIA, right? So by the end of this conversation, there's so much confusion as to what group of people is actually being talked about, that there could be a bunch of stuff dumped in here that people are misunderstanding.
100%. Also, let's just note that Andrew Schultz is shilling for the dark side.
I don't know really anything about Andrew Schultz. I did notice on the screen at Moody's that I make cocktails for that he's performing there sometime soon. But
he's a comedian. Notice how all our comedians are our most trusted pundits.
Correct.
In 20.
They all have podcasts. Why do all the comedians have political podcasts? Like, why don't they have podcasts about like, midget sex or something like that?
And why do they all have, like various degrees worth of knowledge about history and civics, all of them across the board?
Right. Yeah, it is interesting.
It's like how the Masons or the secret society people will know stuff about like geometry and astrology and physics. It's like comedians have to know stuff about like civics, conspiracy, a martial art.
Their heyokas, that sacred clown, the heyokas.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Did
so
in certain circumstances.
Basically it.
That was it? Okay.
Well, no. Keep going.
9/11, pre-9/11, they had a lot more autonomy than they do now, because the 9/11 Commission came out and said, you guys have way too much autonomy. So going back to your whole point did they shoot JFK? Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows because they.
So I think this was in the last propaganda piece we saw where Eric was telling us, well, free speech was never meant to be, can never be unrestricted, and it was never meant to be. When that was like, this is the whole point of everything else we're putting around it.
Correct.
I think this was the whole point of everything else they're putting around it. CIA is just following orders. And that stupid Patriot Act limited our power instead of making it bigger.
Right.
So I think that's like the primary piece in this one.
Correct. Yeah. 100%. There's like all kinds of layers to the cake, but yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, wait. And I have a bunch, but I just want to do one more.
Okay.
122.25, and then we don't have to.
22.25.
When the winter air pushes itself inside, count.
What?
You pull up the transcript, you could be more exacting in going to the exact times.
I don't know how to do that. Let's just.
Okay, I will teach you before our next show.
110. Where are we here?
122.25.
120. Oh, perfect. I'm at 122.10.
That's great.
So the short hard-hitting answer is that the military-industrial complex is our economic security blanket. That's what it is. The reason that the United States loves war is because war ends recessions. And the reason that war ends recessions is because the military-industrial complex spins up. Tens of thousands of jobs are made, massive government spending is made, people make a whole hell of a lot more money, more taxes is taken, and then all that military-industrial produce, all the production, isn't just for us. It can be sold to the UK, it can be sold to France, it can be sold to Germany, it can be sold to Israel, it can be sold to Saudi
Now you have
Arabia.
money coming in. Yeah,
And you have money coming in, and the people who are, when foreign countries buy American goods, what denomination do they use? What currency do they use?
American.
So then how do they get American dollars?
They got to buy them shit.
American dollar.
And then as you buy American dollars, it takes American dollars off the market, which does what to the value of your currency?
Increases the value.
It's net. It's like a triple threat. It's like Justin Timberlake, man.
I mean, this is really well said.
So that's why the military-industrial complex was designed.
As if it wasn't hard-hitting enough, the story about why we need a war. And then he threw in the pop culture Justin Timberlake. Hey, I'm just like you guys. I love my pop music. Then we had Andrew Schultz saying, well said. Like the icing on the cake, just telling his audience, believe everything this person said.
Yeah,
excellent propaganda piece.
Yeah, no, right? Yeah, it'll be good for your pocketbooks, kids. Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's take a quick hop on over to the room here. We've got 123 people. I think this is the most we've ever had in the room.
On
1,
a
2,
Sunday,
3. It's a very large peanut allergy we have. Okay, so thank you everybody for eating salad with us on Sunday. Does anybody have a question, a comment, anything like that they would like us to answer or reply to or anything like that? Now's the time. All capital letters, because that's the only way I can read. Lisa says that she's heard that CIA also stands for Christ in action. Not in this occasion, I don't think. All right, we got a bunch of people sending hearts and love and explosive party favors.
Thank you. Thanks for hitting the like button. I mean, don't hit it. But
I like this one. Joey Charlie says, if wars ended recessions, we would never have had any recession, considering we've never had no wars, right? So we should always not be in a recession is essentially what I think.
Well, it's just like you said, generating the solutions for the problems they generated.
Correct. Yes. All right, Meg, the CIA triad refers to confidentiality, integrity, and availability, describing a model designed to guide policies for information security, InfoSec, within an organization. That sounds meaningful. Dani, your thoughts?
Yes, sure.
Integrity of the information, maybe not integrity of the people.
I mean, that might have been the intention back in OSS days. I don't know.
Like, it's so hard to say, right? I mean, you get some people who, maybe their dad was like an old school CIA agent or FBI agent or something, and they're very convinced their dad was just a hardworking person who cared about the country. And then you meet someone else who's like, yeah, no, my dad was part of the people that trafficked information over from Operation Paperclip, and the whole thing was designed to do it's impossible to get a clear answer, right?
Exactly.
Okay, Robin Dan wants to know, what color are my eyes? They change colors. So I have central heterochromia, and they're like a bluish grayish green with some like ambery stuff around the pupils, but they change colors.
Wait, what is this thing you have?
It's called central heterochromia. I think you have it too. I'll examine you closer next time we're in person, but I think you have it as well. It's when you have multiple colors within the same eye. So heterochromia is when you see like the husky dog that has one blue eye and one brown eye.
Yep.
Central heterochromia is when you have multiple colors within one eye, and one of the color rings is like a circle around the pupil, like a yellow or a gold or a amber color circle, and then there's like green or gray or blue or hazel around that. It's different than just having hazel eyes. It's also different than having like patchwork eyes from health issues.
Okay.
Right? If you look at, so it's part of my whole, like, they pick the people for the projects based on their eyes kind of thing that I've talked about. But central heterochromia is a rare condition, but almost everyone I know has it. And it is not exclusively found in Jewish people, but most Jewish people have, like, there a lot of other people have it, but like that's one of the main characteristics that supposedly, and again, we're just dealing with endless version of propaganda, but that Mengele was looking for in the camps was he was only interested in the women and the children that had central heterochromia. He wanted to examine them.
Creepy.
Right? So your eyes are more hazily brown than they are like bluish green. But I think I noticed when I was looking at you when I was there the last time that you have one color around the pupil and then another color as the eye expands, as it goes out, the iris. So I hope that answers your question, Robin. Thoughts on the 4/8 eclipse? No new ones since last time. We answered that on Wednesday. I don't know. Everybody seems to have a lot of thoughts about it. I don't really think about it. I have to go to work. I'm having dinner with a friend. I haven't decided if I'm going to look or not look. I'm in the path of totality. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Any suggestions, people? There's a lunar eclipse, I think, tonight going into the morning. I'll be on Lindsay Sharman's show tonight. We might talk about that. She mentioned it. Okay. Anything else? Dani, you have any more thoughts before we
No, I feel complete.
All right, we have 129 people in the room right now. That is very exciting, guys. Thank you for making our Sunday salad bar full of
super chat us.
Feel free to super chat, or even better,
brought joy to your Sunday.
Absolutely, or even better, become a supporter at wordspodcast.locals.com. Go over there, listen to Narrative Control supplements and all the other goodies that are there. Thank you for making our salad bar full of nuts and fruits. We will see you on Wednesday night.